Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am your host, Jim Kelgard, and you're tuned into a new era of the podcast, I guess we could say. And today we have an all-star cast assembled to talk about the amazing documentary film that was released just a few days ago called The Age of Disclosure. And so to discuss that today, we've got as I said, a great team assembled here, and we're going to go around the room here. I'm going to introduce everybody, starting with Mr. John Nyberger, my favorite Denver Broncos fan. How are you doing, John?
Fantastically. Mostly awake after our marathon chat yesterday about today's topic, but I'm looking forward to part 2 today.
Fantastic. And of course, we also have Mr. Johnny Stratton. Johnny, how are you doing today, buddy?
No audio.
No audio? Oh, man.
Johnny, I think you're on mute. Are you muted?
Audio from John.
And I was the one that was muted yesterday at the start.
You were?
Yeah.
There he
See,
is.
come on.
I'm here now. You heard nothing I said. Everybody at home is just going to be so ecstatic that I wasn't talking. But no, I'm excited to be here.
Pleased.
We're still recovering after our fun discussion about the Age of Disclosure yesterday. You know, the New Age Manhattan Project. It's fantastic. I'm excited.
Right on. And joining us today, we have two amazing special guests. We have Mr. Jeff Freeman of the legendary JFree906 Podcast, the gold standard, as I like to call it, of podcasting. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. And I really have to thank you guys for joining Mike Owen and myself yesterday to talk about Age of Disclosure. We had a great time. We had a good discussion, and we're going to keep it going here tonight. So thank you guys for inviting us.
You betcha. And as you just mentioned, we also have your awesome podcasting partner, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mike Owen. Mike, it is so good to see you. Welcome to the Soul of the Unexplained. So good to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I'm doing much better today. I'm a little less shell-shocked from watching the show 6 times. I've only watched it twice so far today. And I think it's starting to sink in. So I'm starting to be able to breathe a little better now, a little more oxygen to the brain. So I'm ready for another great discussion.
You watched it twice today. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Holy cow. You know what, though? That's 8 times total. That's about how many times you need to make it through this and start to actually absorb. That makes sense.
And, you know, I've only watched it one time.
You got to catch up, Johnny. You're
Oh,
slacking.
Wow.
Got to up your game, man.
Right?
You know, when you have a super brain like comes with being part of the Stratton family, you really sometimes you just need to watch it one time.
Oh, the
now, will I watch it
humility.
again soon? Absolutely.
It's getting pretty thick in here, folks, and we haven't even gotten started yet. And of course, we have to give a shout out to our brother from another mother, the co-creator of The Soul of the Unexplained, Mr. Roger Stokes. Regrettably, is unable to join us today, but he's not feeling very well, and we just wanted to issue our best wishes for Roger for a quick and speedy recovery. And we sure miss you, Roger, and can't wait for you to get back in the saddle with us. So with that, gentlemen, let's dive right in. We had an excellent conversation yesterday on the JFree906 podcast, the all 5 of us here, and we talked about a lot of the things that are brought forth in the Age of Disclosure documentary, and pretty lively discussion and a pretty varied discussion. It was really exciting. And folks, I'm going to post the link in the video description here on YouTube to where you can go find that episode that we recorded on the JFree906 podcast. I'd also like to take a moment and encourage and invite everybody to please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the JFree906 podcast. The work that Jeff and Mike do, and Jeff's other partners, Seth Bridges, and you get Tom Burns on there with you occasionally to help you out with. He covers everything from The Curse of Oak Island, as well as The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, when the docuseries is currently in season. And also he talks about Sasquatch, and a new field that Jeff has kind of really started to dive into is the treasure hunting field, which all kinds of great stuff. And so Jeff is just, he's just one of my favorite human beings and one of the best podcasters out there. And when he goes live on YouTube, the live chat and the audience that he has, one of the finest audiences out there. So please, folks, if you get the chance, please follow the JFree906 podcast, subscribe to their channel, give them a like, and show them some gym-sized love, because we sure appreciate everything that Mike and Jeff do, and so happy to have them here with us for the discussion today. So to kick off, gentlemen, I thought where we would start is there's a quote here that Jay Stratton actually makes on the during the Age of Disclosure, and I'm gonna read his quote here. It's toward the end of the documentary, and Jay says, "The people behind the legacy program truly believe that the secret is so intense that they can't share it with the American people. There may be aspects of this that are so intense they can't share it. However, I think the basic fact that we are not alone in the universe, we can share that with the American people. We can handle it at this point. Hopefully, one day, the American people will learn the bigger story and how it impacts us all." Close quote. So again, Jay Stratton, I'm not ashamed to say that I am 100% Team Stratton when it comes to Mr. Jay Stratton there. But Jay's not a man of many words, and whenever he does speak, it's usually something pretty profound. And the thing that I've always liked and admired about Jay is that he is not somebody that seeks the limelight and the attention. And you can tell by the way he carries himself and presents himself, this is a no-nonsense, very straightforward, matter-of-fact kind of guy. And so whenever Jay says anything, I always make sure to pay close attention to what it is. And so I kind of wanted to ask each of you, and Jeff, we'll start with you. Based off the quote that I just read there by Jay Stratton here, where he's talking about how some people that are the people that are currently overseeing the legacy program may not feel that we're ready and worthy of knowing the truth. And clearly, Jay feels that at the very least, we should be entitled to know the fact that we are not alone in the universe, and maybe not even alone on this planet. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, I totally think we are ready. It's been a long time coming, personally. The information that, and it's kind of something that I've talked about before. Are we ever going to have all the details? Like from Roswell, or some of the information or technology that these contractors have been working on. Are we going to get all the details from that? No. But are we ready? I think is mainstream humanity ready for this? I think we are. Matter of fact, I think we're eager for it. And for that reason alone, I think it's time to let American people know, let everyone know, humanity know, that we are not alone in the cosmos. So I really have to hand it to them for what they've done here. And as we talked about a little bit last night, we have to keep it going as well.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Thanks so much. Mike, how about you? What are your thoughts on that particular aspect?
It really depends. I think sometimes people split hairs a little bit too much on knowing everything, or you say I think we're ready for everything, and then somebody says, oh, you're shooting for catastrophic disclosure and giving out all the secrets and classified information, and then you go back to the other way of Americans can't handle it. And I think overall, the word's already out. I mean, we were talking about this before this documentary. This pretty much snaps the line, though, and says they're real. But what else do we know? I think we can handle more than they think we can. So where does that line then move to? That's for the experts to determine. I don't really know, but to me, I think the American people are more attuned to what's going on than they realize. And I think no information is bad. Only what you do with it can be. So tell us what you can tell us. If there's secrets that would harm the country, then I'm okay with those staying secret. The rest of it, let's start talking about it. And if there are people that are having trouble with that, let's help them.
100%. Very well said. Could not agree more. John, what are your thoughts? Do you have any other different viewpoint on that than Jeff or Mike have? Any insight on that?
Maybe. I don't know. I kind of agree with everything they said. And like Mike was saying, a lot of people say that we're ready for everything. Or was it Jeff? I've already lost track. But you can't really know the answer to that without knowing what everything means, right? There might be some things we would rather not know about this. I mean, there's always the chance that the government does know some things. Like, let's just say, the aliens are walking among us crowd is right. What if the abduction crowd is right? And what if the crowd that says these things can do anything they want, essentially, and make you see things that aren't there, make you remember things that didn't happen, make you forget things that did happen, and there's nothing you can do about it? That's the sort of thing that might freak some people out. So, I mean, is that part of everything? Maybe we need to start the conversation with just, yeah, this stuff is real. We're not alone. That part is absolutely true. We still have a long way to go to figure out what's really going on. But yes, it's true. These things exist. They're not human. And let's, band together and go from that starting point and just see where we can see what progress we can make then. I don't know. I don't know if like a total dump of everything the government knows all at once would even be helpful. Maybe we do need a slower, I'm not super slow, I'm saying, but a little bit at a time, so it's a progressive disclosure to give everyone time to process and absorb what they might know.
Yeah,
it's hard to say.
Yeah, excellent points, John. I want to come back to a few of those that you just made. And Johnny, we'll get your input here. So the points that John just made just a few seconds ago, as well as Mike and Jeff. Johnny? What are your thoughts on what your dad said here? And do you think, as John just mentioned, it may be more of a controlled, for want of a better term, or a specifically coordinated, gradual disclosure where they start to lay everything out, or is it the kind of solution where we need to rip the Band-Aid off and just put the good with the bad all at the same time? What are your thoughts on that?
So ultimately, I love the idea of disclosure. I like getting the Band-Aid off, so to speak, but we have to look at the American people, the average person in the world. And one of the things that I had a very nice conversation with Paul Smith about is, is the average American capable of handling disclosure if they just full blown rip the Band-Aid off? Not only are we not alone, they're among us, they walk among us. And honestly, I don't think that the average person is ready for that. The potentials of mass hysteria or psychological impact that it could have, just full blown giving all the information out, could be too much for not only individuals to handle, but the economic impact on the globe. There's a lot of facets about this situation that we'd have to be mindful of, because, you, I, everybody here, we can probably handle that full disclosure, but not everybody can handle that disclosure. And that's really my only concern. And I think that's kind of where they're coming from about we can't give all of the information out that we have. And there's some things that will need to be kept secret from the American public.
Yeah, excellent points, Johnny.
That doesn't mean we stop talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Totally agree, Mike.
Exactly. And I guess the term for it would be ontological shock. A lot of people, their
Yes.
worldview, and we got into this a little bit yesterday with the discussion that we were having on Jeff's podcast, of there are some people whose worldview does not allow for anything outside of humanity being greater other than maybe God. There's God, and then there's humanity, and then there's nothing else, right? And I do know several people that actually have viewpoints that are similar to that. So the ontological shock, I think, is a very real thing, particularly if we do find out that some of these more challenging things to perhaps believe in at face value, for me anyway, like the abduction phenomena, the notion that humanity was and is a science experiment of some kind, of some advanced being, and that everything that we believe as far as religion and all that is all just stuff that was planted into humanity eons ago by whoever these people are that are our creators. So you can easily see how some of this stuff can get into the really weird, the really challenging things for people that again, we're still dealing with people. Let's take this down to the basic aspect of it. We're still dealing with a lot of people here that are having difficulty even accepting that UAPs are real, and that they're anything that could be anything other than high-tech, secret equipment that the U.S. military or some other country is using. They just simply cannot wrap their head around the fact or accept the notion that there may be non-human intelligence that's out there. And I think that's always going to be a bit of an uphill battle with some people. But I do, um, tying back into the original point here of Jay's quote there, I do agree that at the very basic, we do need to we should have it acknowledged that we're not alone, because I myself, I don't think that we're alone in the universe, and there's a lot of really good indicators that we are very likely not alone on this planet. And so that's kind of how I feel about that. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
I did want to jump in if I could real quick and say too that I think the quote was made during the show. I think Lou Elizondo had said it. If I might be incorrect on that, but if we let our friends know, we're letting our enemies know. And if there's certain tech that we have based upon reverse engineering that they don't want any enemies or adversaries to know about, I think that needs to be kept secret for sure. Because obviously you don't want to tip your hand on that. And if the other countries have this kind of tech and they're working on it, what's keeping them from using it? Probably not knowing what we have is keeping them from using it. So I think that's a good plan there. But as you said, we need to know that we're not alone. And if the government could come out and admit that to everyone, especially if they've actually communicated or worked in any way with non-human intelligence, that would be huge to know about that. So.
And you know what?
Yeah,
that
so
reminds me.
that's-
Oh, sorry, Johnny. I was going to
I
say
was
it
just gonna
reminds me on
say,
the
that's a-
Joe Rogan. Sorry, there's a delay. We're stepping on top of each other.
This is always what
you
we
go
do.
ahead.
Just
you
folks
go first,
at home
and then I'll
understand.
finish up.
I always step over John, and then sometimes he steps over me in return. But no, I was just going to say that, yeah, that would be a quote from my dad, Jay, in The Age of Disclosure, that we can't tell our friends without also telling our enemies.
Yeah.
So that's what my input was.
No, I was going to say that reminds me, not in the film, but on the Joe Rogan Experience, Dan Farah did a longer interview, and he was talking about some things that he was told that weren't in the movie. And one of the interesting things that he said he was told was that, yeah, we have reverse engineered some of this. We do have some unbelievably advanced technology, but we wouldn't ever bring it out unless we absolutely had no other choice. Like, it's so powerful and so advanced that we would not even bring it out unless we were like moments away from a nuclear war. Like if it's just a conventional war, you'll never see this stuff. They can't show their hand, which probably they don't want to alert our adversaries about what we have. So like it's like in case of emergency, break glass kind of thing. Like either that or the aliens actually invade, and who knows? I've kind of heard, I'd swear someone has said that very point too, that is it possible that we have reverse engineered and developed some of this stuff and the NHI don't even know about it, and we're kind of holding that in our hip pocket in case some of that turns adversarial at some point. That's a wild thought that we're actually talking about literal Star Wars with aliens or some non-human species. But what if part of everything is that's actually our reality? How wild would that be? That actually could happen, and we're just going about our daily lives, and we have no clue that this is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Well, Chris Bartell, when we had him on, and remember, folks, that Chris Bartell worked. He had security clearances that had him working security out at Area 51. Obviously, he did security at Skinwalker Ranch as well. And one of the things that Chris has talked to us about in the past is that there is a lot of technology that we don't know about that the United States does have that is right out of the pages of science fiction and something, like some of these comic book movies, that secret weapons and secret technology that are being developed at places like Area 51. Now, that's what that base specifically is for testing experimental aircraft, experimental weapon systems, and that's not the only facility that we know about in the United States. So I think that's a very, very good point, John. A very excellent point is that there's a lot of this stuff that uh, you know the United States government, for the reason that Jay and Johnny, to Johnny's point, that you can't tell the public without also telling your enemies, right? So there's a lot of reason why this stuff maintains that level of secrecy. And so yeah, it's a delicate dance that has to be done when you're dealing with all this kind of stuff, for sure.
And if I could add too, just when they were talking about one of the things that Marco Rubio had mentioned during the movie was talking about not imagining what could happen, like they were talking about Pearl Harbor, and not knowing or not imagining that the Japanese could make it through there and actually target and bomb our ships and the base there in Pearl Harbor. Not imagining that it could happen resulted in it happening and not in us not being prepared. So I think it's very important if they, that they imagine that. So as much as I would hate to see, that happen, that if some alien or NHI, we'll call it, would want to come here and wipe out humanity or something like that, we have to imagine that. And that's something that Reagan kind of got laughed at by a lot of people when he talked about that back in 1987. So, it's important that we do imagine it and just pray that it never happens because, we have bad actors. We've talked about bad actors in humanity. Are there bad actors out there as well? If there's more than one species, which indications are there could be bad actors, and we need to be imagining that it could happen.
100%. I
And to your
completely.
point, all of these things can be chopped up to intelligence failures. Sorry, Jim. So to your point about Pearl Harbor, we should have seen that coming because the Japanese had actually developed the idea for these torpedoes from the British, because the British used in a very similar harbor, very similar techniques to attack a German harbor that gave the Japanese this idea, and it's an intelligence failure. And that's where post 9/11, seeing the intelligence failures that the US government was falling into, that people like my dad, Jay, have developed this never again attitude towards making sure that we never are found flat on our feet. That is the biggest thing with not only Age of Disclosure, but with the UAP topic at large, is we need to ensure that we don't have an intelligence failure that leads to a UAP-esque version of 9/11.
100%.
That's a good point because what I still don't I can't even fathom is the folks that are in the Pentagon that your dad talked about saying that this is the work of the devil and we can't talk about it. Really? That seems like the best thing to talk about if you're in the Pentagon and responsible for protecting us.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you talk about it? You have to know your enemy. You can't not talk about your enemy. So it just seems crazy.
Yeah, it's mind blowing that actually happened. I mean, I get it, but because we've all run into people like that's the way they think. But you're at like you said, you're at the Pentagon. This is a national security issue. You have unidentified things of unidentified capability in your area of operation and the area that you are chartered with keeping secure. And someone says, "Oh, it's just demons. You should leave them alone. Well, maybe we need to learn how to fight demons. Then we need to figure out what this stuff is, you know?
Yeah. And that's,
I mean, imagine if you're in Afghanistan. Are you not going to go after the source of these IEDs getting planted? There's not much difference. You want to know where are they coming from. These are just a proverbial IED of a situation waiting to happen.
well, that's just it. And Marco Rubio completely, I mean, that was probably one of the best analogies that we heard in the documentary, was what Marco Rubio said that Jeff mentioned, where he illustrated the point of, look what happened at Pearl Harbor, look what happened on 9/11. Those were clearly intelligence failures. And I think if we were to ignore the fact that this is a very serious issue, forget about the uh, some of the more weird aspects about this, just simply refusing to acknowledge that this is an issue and trying to sweep it under the rug is potentially could lead to the greatest intelligence failure of all time, that would pale, Pearl Harbor and 9/11 could potentially pale in comparison to the type of intelligence failure we're talking about here if they don't start to take it more seriously and be more transparent with the public in the aspects of it that they are able to, without causing, I guess, mass hysteria or something like that. And that kind of leads into, it ties into this whole overall thing. What if, these what if scenarios of what if if some of these civilizations that are out there are not benign, if they're not benevolent, what if they do want to claim our planet for their own natural resources? Those are serious questions that I'm sure there's been conversations like that behind the scenes by people, particularly in the legacy program, that have probably had to take these into consideration. But for me, again, I'm one of those people that would rather know, if we're looking at a grim situation or a potentially grim situation, I'd want to know about it so that I can prepare myself and my family to deal with it as best as I can, other than just simply being hit with it, on the day that it happens, because by then it's going to be too late, right? So yeah, it's again, it's just that delicate dance that the intelligence community has to do. I mean, you can understand why they would want to keep it secret, and then we can transition from this aspect of it to, what about these allegations that it's been moved into the certain aspects of the UAP issue have been moved into the private sector by way of defense contractors, keeping maintaining these crash retrievals and reverse engineering, if for no other reason to avoid being subject to FOIA requests, right? So that's a huge thing as well. And maybe we can dabble into that a little bit, because what are we going to do if we find out that all these crash retrievals really are real, and we have no reason at this point to think that they may not be, based off of the continued testimony of people that are coming forward? What does that say about the laws that have been broken and showing favoritism to one contractor over another? To say nothing of just the lack of oversight. We know that that's one of the big allegations, is lack of oversight. Is that the Congress? There's a system of checks and balances in our American society, and when it comes to the UAP topic, it appears, and the allegations are there from David Grush and several others, that there has purposely been no congressional oversight, because this thing is so secret, so compartmentalized. It, that's one of the things that they're going to have to sort out, is just in the simplest terms of constitutional law. There's been laws that have been broken, laws that in any other circumstance would carry severe consequences for the people that violated those laws. To say nothing of the allegations of people that have had their careers ruined, that have tried going public in the past, or that have tried, bringing this out to people, and rumors that people have been threatened with their lives or have been killed in some instances. Some of you may know the story of this gentleman by the name of Phil Schneider. back in the 1990s, he was one of these guys that came forward with an extraordinary claim about an underground base, I think in Dulce, New Mexico, where he was working for a geological company or mining, some kind of mining or something, and they were digging, and they allegedly encountered this group of non-human intelligence, aliens, if you will, and a lot of people wrote him off as being, crazy. Oh, it's a great story, but he died under mysterious circumstances because he was starting to spill the beans about a lot of the things that have since been brought up by other people that have come forward since 2017. So, you know, we hear these legends and myths of wet works, within certain agencies in the government, like the CIA. And Lou even talked about in the video how his life had been threatened, and that I think it was and correct me if I'm wrong here, but when Lou was talking specifically about the Department of Energy, there was a thing that flashed up on the screen, and he said it was specifically within the Department of Energy that said that violating the NDAs, or the secrecy once you've been written on the programs, is punishable by death and or imprisonment. So I thought that was really interesting that it specifically called out death. Um, and he talked about how the CIA has, in the past, they've taken out American citizens by assassinations and things like that. Which, I mean, that's again, we're getting into the realm of stuff that may be difficult for some people to believe, but there's an awful lot of things that make it look like some of this stuff may actually be happening. So, um, I guess the question I have for you then is, taking all of that into account that I've just talked about, does there need to be some kind of a amnesty period if we start to go forward, like a blanket amnesty? It's a big word, Jim. Amnesty. So, does there need to be some kind of blanket amnesty to allow these people that have been part of maybe these illegal things, so that we can just get everything out and have a clean slate moving forward? So, what are your thoughts on that? And Mike, let's start with you. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think that's the case. I think there's too many people that have too much to lose. Um, they'll never divulge everything that they know, um, unless you give them a get out of jail free card. We've got to snap the line. We've got to make it okay to get the truth out. Once we've got the truth, then we can kind of start over again, and put in some gates to try and protect that from happening again. But otherwise, it's going to continue on the way that it's been continuing on. I think you have to give some sort of assurance that there won't be catastrophic repercussions, whatever that may mean. Um, so that we can get to the truth, or enough of the truth out to start to make some progress.
Amen. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and I flashed that up here. That was directly out of that out of the movie, and it said whoever discloses restricted data shall be punished by death or imprisonment. Death was first,
Right.
if you saw that,
Yeah.
and that's a pretty scary thing. And that was something they talked about in the show, was that if your life is threatened, versus like an NDA where you get fined $10,000 or something like that if you spill the beans, death is permanent. That's not something you can, recover from. So,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good incentive to not speak about stuff. So I think Mike is exactly right. You made the point too. They need to give these whistleblowers a pass. There was a law passed about to be able, so they can come out and talk about it, and that needs to be with not only that, but also what happened to Lou Elizondo with discrediting him and coming out and actually lying that he was not part of ATIP and things like that, and ruining your reputation. So yes, there need to be safeguards in place for these people so that they can. Now, if you you have to be careful with that too, because there are certain things like Lou and Jay have said that there are certain highly classified things that they cannot talk about. You don't want to give anybody a free pass to just spill the beans on everything. So there still has to. Where do you call that fine line? Well, that's the difficulty there in what they can say, what they can't talk about. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I mean, where's that line that we need to draw?
Johnny.
That kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. I think it needs to be a progression. You can't just start with the big dump. They have to figure out, okay, what can we say? What can we divulge without saying too much, without divulging any additional classified information that might negatively impact our capabilities, or let adversaries know what we can do, but still get the information out to the people that that we're trying to be transparent to. That, and to Jim's point, I think there needs to be some sort of amnesty. That we really need that, or else you'll never get some of these people to come clean about some of the things they've participated in. You just won't. They're never going to come up and say some of the bad things they might have done if they know that they're going to, have the hammer dropped on them as soon as they say it. It just doesn't make any sense. So it might be a trade-off. There might be, and what if people actually have been killed? What if U.S. citizens have been killed to protect this secret? Are we willing to say, okay, the people that murdered this citizen without due process, as far as we're aware, we will give them amnesty because it's more important to us to hear the truth than to punish that individual person or organization or whatever? I don't know. It's an interesting point. And I don't know where you draw that line.
Absolutely. Johnny, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that really the line is to be determined by the individual that would know the information. Because what really truly is that line? Is it something that puts our national security at risk, that puts an individual at risk? It's a really hard thing to be able to say when we don't know what the information is. So the individuals with the knowledge, unfortunately, kind of have to determine where that line is. So I will say, yes, there should be some aspect of amnesty, but as a society, do we really grant amnesty to things that have resulted in murder? So,
Exactly.
and I'll pose a question to you guys in relation to this is, what are the social implications of not only the amnesty, but the disclosure that these people would be doing? What kind of social implication would there be?
Well, imagine, I just thought of this. This had never occurred to me. But, a lot of the impact we're talking about is going to be to our economy. Some of these defense industries are absolutely massive. What if it were to come out that, yeah, Lockheed Martin has murdered people, to protect some of their secret programs? Let's say that becomes public knowledge and is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
their
it's a
stock
valid
price
point.
is
If
going
$1
to
billion
drop to
is on the
nothing.
line,
Yeah,
$1 billion worth killing someone over. Yeah, billions.
But if word of that got out, their stock is going to tank. Just that type of thing could cause an entire section of an economy to crash.
It could cause an entire
that could just be dominoes falling. Yeah, exactly. So they have to think about that sort of thing as they navigate this. So, but they're the ones that painted us into this corner in the first place. So,
yeah, it's and I guess that's kind of a great way to look at it, is there's no one size fits all approach that you can take to this topic, because we only have a very limited amount, and when I say we, I mean we, the public, have a very extremely limited amount of information to base things off of. And the thing that I really enjoyed about this documentary, The Age of Disclosure, is the fact that everybody that comes on screen has something truly impactful to add to the conversation. I love how they bring in Travis Taylor, for instance, when they're talking about the actual specifics and mechanics of some of the flight characteristics of the UAPs that are shown. And we approached that a little bit last night in Jeff's podcast. is the fact that, these craft exhibit, flight characteristics that just we just don't see, right? Except in these extreme cases of UAPs. But you had Travis Taylor, who is, probably one of the most qualified people to speak on the flight characteristics of these things that he sees. And then you've got intelligence officials like Jay Stratton, like Lou Elizondo, that were neck deep in researching and investigating some of these sightings and whatnot. But then you also have not 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 only Ryan Graves and David Fravor, but Alex Dietrich. Okay, Alex Dietrich was the pilot of the other F-18 when David Fravor was out there with the 2004 Nimitz Tic Tac incident that happened. So you have the testimony of three witnesses. These are men and women who defend our country, who protect in fact, Jeff, I think you mentioned it this way. They defend our skies. They keep the airspace around the United States safe. That their biggest mandate in the military is to protect the United States, the sovereign state of the United States of America. And so when you have somebody like a Commander David Fravor and a Lieutenant Ryan Graves and Alex Dietrich that come on camera and tell you exactly what they saw, and let's bear in mind that both Fravor and Graves testified under oath in Congress to what they saw. And yet we still have people that say, no, it wasn't, a UFO. It was birds, right? Um, we won't name the debunker, but there's a very well-known debunker out there that likes to dismiss even the testimony of David Fravor and, Ryan Graves and these other pilots, that know what they saw. And the big thing there, and this is a conversation that I had with a very dear friend of mine, is that even if you can't accept the basic things that they are bringing forth in this documentary, the fact of the matter is the paper trail is still there, and the sensor data is still there. And Mike, this might be a good one for you to chime in on because of your engineering background, but there is the fact that these objects are being shown on multiple sensor platforms, not just the really super advanced radar systems, but infrared and all these other imaging. Uh, Trust me, if the military says these things are solid, tangible objects, they've got to be. So, how anybody can still sit back and tell somebody like a Commander Fravor or Ryan Graves or Alex Dietrich that no, you're wrong because I'm an armchair quarterback and I know what's better because it just simply isn't possible. It's too exotic. It's too extraordinary. And the reality is the data is there, is it not, to back up the claims that this is truly, by definition, anomalous things that are appearing out there. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the issue with one of the tactics debunkers use is specifically to not look at all of the information. They pick one thing out and they'll try to come up with a way that that one thing isn't correct, and they'll ignore all the other stuff that's too tough to dispute. The problem is that unfortunately, all of those circumstances, as we've heard, there is multiple data sources, but they're being collected with systems that we don't want to talk about. They're classified, or they're just, you don't want to give some of those details out because the bad guys will figure out a way around it. So we can't show it. But rest assured that it's there, and there's just no disputing it. The debunkers, it seems like it's almost like a religion for them. I don't know who's paying them or why they continue to be so adamant. It's almost a joke. Some of the stuff that they come up with, and they're just so consistently against anything being real, that to me it's just kind of a joke. Yeah, that you can't you can't refute the data. The data is real. It's just unfortunate in some cases we can't see it because it's coming from systems that are too sensitive to be sharing the information from.
Absolutely. And I know I'm going to sound like a broken record to some of our subscribers that always hear me say this, but that's one of the things that has always impressed me about the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is the fact that the research that's being done out there is being driven by the data. And I think the fact that the data clearly shows that we're dealing with truly anomalous phenomena out there with these UAPs. And it's kind of disheartening at times because we see what happened with Arrow and specifically with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and how he seemed to, and I've referred to him oftentimes as the new Edward Condon, of the old Condon Committee that uh, had already arrived at his conclusion before his investigation even began. And it seems that far too often when we have an organization like Arrow, and maybe not so much with John Kozlowski, who's the new director, but certainly his predecessor, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, sure did seem to want to throw a wet blanket on literally everything and did not want to even remotely lend credence to the fact that some of the reports that came across his desk were in fact anomalous. And it's kind of difficult when you have people like that that are in your way as stumbling blocks that are trying to subvert any kind of progress being made on it by continuing to debunk and dispel everything out there despite what the data shows. And uh if any of you other guys want to chime in on that, the as far as the data, just at least from my viewpoint, the data is not only there, but the data just simply does not lie. Am I wrong?
Well, the scientific method is to follow the data. You need to try to eliminate your biases as much as possible. The debunkers, to Mike's point, that's not their approach. They're bringing their bias with them, loud and proud. They're waving their bias flag, because that's how they approach everything. Their starting point is that none of that can be true. It can't be possible. Therefore, it's fake. Therefore, we are going to only pick the pieces of evidence that we can easily debunk, and they'll focus on those items, completely ignoring, they might focus on one little piece, literally the tip of the iceberg, and miss the entire wealth of information. But again, some of that information that could counter those arguments might be on classified systems that we can't divulge because we don't want to let people know what our capabilities are. So that you do sometimes end up in a catch-22. But yeah, just follow the data, follow the process, and be open to where it leads.
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder about people like that. Are they simply that closed-minded to be able to accept a different opinion based upon that data, or is there a different agenda attached? So you look at that. That is what always gets me when I see somebody like that that simply will not accept something. I wonder, is it because you don't want to, or is it because you're just so close-minded, or is there some other agenda attached to that? Makes me wonder.
There's a couple of those I think that's exactly true about. I get very suspicious about their debunking. There are others I think are doing it almost in good faith, but there are definitely some that are like, there's clearly an agenda. It's definitely not in good faith for some of them.
And it almost makes me wonder if maybe some of the reason why a lot of these debunkers are so adamant in their desire to debunk almost anything that comes out is if they're just afraid that, once they admit to something truly being anomalous and that it may actually be something exotic, that again plays into their own ontological shock. Maybe they have this worldview that non-human intelligence being here or visiting the earth just simply cannot be possible because they're looking at it and applying current technology, which is we don't have the means to travel interstellar to go visit another planet, or even it's even prohibitive for our current technology that we know of to take us to another planet in our solar system without it taking months and or years and or decades to get there, to say nothing of uh, planets or anything that's multiple light years or hundreds or thousands of light years away. So I almost have to wonder if maybe sometimes they take that viewpoint because they're afraid to admit that maybe everything they believed in, everything they've taught themselves or conditioned themselves to believe in, would automatically be turned upside down with that single admission that, okay, we may in fact be dealing with something exotic and of non-human origin. So that's something that's always made me wonder if they're, for the debunkers that are truly, that aren't on the take with somebody or something like that, because I do think there are a number of well-known debunkers out there that are probably paid and maybe informants or you know uh, pawns, if you will, to the people that are the gatekeepers trying to keep everything suppressed. So that wouldn't surprise me if that comes into play with some of this there with some of the debunkers.
I take a look at also in that Tim Burchett was talking about when they were trying to pass the UAP Disclosure Act, and running into resistance there because some of the other politicians, they're getting a lot of pushback from other politicians, and these politicians could very well be people who are getting uh, what's the word, where they're getting funds from
Funding, yeah.
these contractors.
Campaign
You know,
contributions.
yeah, yeah, they're getting money from these contractors. Yes, yes, thank you. Campaign contributions from these contractors, and therefore they can't go out and say anything against it, and they are going to provide that pushback because they're basically being paid to do so. So how do you fight that? I have no idea.
Right.
Sunlight.
Now let me
Sunlight is
check
the
with my
greatest disinfectant.
lobbyists here.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Let me check with my lobbyists here before I pose anything further, obviously. But how do you guys think that we fight the stigma? Because I feel like all of what we're talking about here kind of comes back to this stigma that exists in talking about it, the discussions and the reporting. How do we conquer this pre-existing stigma at all levels, from the lower enlisted to the private contracting, DoD, DOW, however we want to say it, security forces out there when they witness an incursion from a UAP? How do we get past this pre-existing stigma and push for the reporting of these things?
Well,
That's a
I
tough
think
call.
I think go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say you got to normalize it, and that's what this is doing. Is just continue to talk about it, and it just starts to become part of the culture. And once it's part of the culture, there's still people that will try and block it. Um, the folks in the Pentagon that have their religious views that say you can't talk about it. That type of stuff will still happen, but because you can talk about it, you can start to deal with those roadblocks and get them out of the way. It's, to me, it's continuing the discussion. You just saw, I think both CNN and Fox News do interviews with folks associated with this, and there was no X Files theme song, and there was no poo pooing it. They actually took it at face value, and were serious about it. So it's going to take a little bit more time, but that's how you solve it. Is you continue to talk about it, you normalize it. It is a thing. We talk about it. You hear it on the news from time to time. You see it on podcasts all the time. It's just something we have to start dealing with. And then when you get resistance from certain people, you have to deal with those individuals.
100%. I could not
I think you're exactly
agree
right. It's kind
more.
of a little bit about what I have.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say it's kind of a little bit about what I was mentioning yesterday. Is that if we continue to talk about it, first of all, you have to have something like what just happened, the Age of Disclosure movie come out. And then we talk about it. Everybody start talking about it. and then the media will start talking about it. And when the media starts talking about it, they are the biggest influencers, whether you're watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, whatever you're watching. If they start talking about it, it's going to do exactly what you just said, Mike. It's going to start to get out there, and it may take some time. These things work that way. It may take some time, but eventually, those that are on the fence are going to come over first, and then those that are adamant, some of them may never come over. And it's like I've said before, if you have the alien mothership come over and fly over top of DC, everyone sees it. It's on the news. And they start sending the ship down to the lawn, on the White House lawn. You're still going to have people that are going to say, nope, 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 nope. Fake news, fake news, fake news. This is not real. It's not happening. You're never going to get past that. But I think that the slow progression of us talking about it will eventually win the day.
I completely agree, Jeff, and
Absolutely.
especially what Mike was saying. The way that you do it is you normalize the conversation. You mainstream it. You make it, and you do so. You have to have confidence when you talk to people about it, because that's what I have been doing. Again, guys, prior to 2017, I was so not the UFO guy. I'd always believed that there was life elsewhere in the universe, but I just didn't think it was practical or really likely that non-human intelligence from elsewhere in the cosmos made its way to Earth. But quite obviously, now that we know that our own government has admitted that UAPs are real, we've now had, since 2017, we've had what, 4 congressional hearings that have had people under oath come forward and tell of legacy crash retrieval programs of craft that is of non-human origin, as well as non-human beings that have also been recovered in some of these crashes, the biologics as they call them. And so yeah, and Jeff, I'm going to quote you. You said this about your podcast last night, and it's 100% rings true, and that is, a fire has been lit, and it is our job, the 5 of us plus anybody that believes in this topic, that is really big on it. You have got to maintain that fire and keep that fire going. And how do we do that? We do that by doing exactly what the 5 of us are doing right now. We're talking about it. We're talking about the possibilities. We're comparing notes. This is truly, in my opinion, it's the biggest news in the history of humanity. To have that confirmation that we are not alone, not only not alone in the universe, but not alone on this planet. And what the amazing thing is now that I've kind of evolved from where I was prior to 2017, I have no fear. It's not something that scares me. It's not something that worries me, because I believe that everything's going to be okay. And I think that a lot of good is only going to come out of the more of this secret that gets peeled back. But the way that, and Johnny, excellent question. I think the way forward is to do just what we're doing right now. Talk about it. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with your families. Talk about it with coworkers, and at the water cooler. Just say, hey, have you heard about this documentary that came out? And the only way that you're going to get people to pay attention is to be open and talk about it. And yes, you are going to encounter pushback from people. You're going to have some people that are just outright going to say, oh, you're one of those crazy UFO people. Where's your tinfoil hat, right? That's inevitable. But here's the thing that I've noticed, and this has really surprised me. When I first started talking about this topic with Roger in the very beginning of the Soul of the Unexplained, I was really, I did have some fear of how people were going to respond, particularly people that I was friends with, that all of a sudden, hey, Jim's talking about UFOs. Woo! People do that anyway because of my taste in music generally. But the thing that surprised me is, once Roger and I started talking about this and talking about Skinwalker Ranch and a lot of the other things that we talk about on this podcast, is that most people have a genuine curiosity and interest as well. And the amazing thing is sometimes you come across people that have had their own experiences. And that's the big thing, is finding out that you're not alone and believing that some of these things are not only real and not only possible, but they're real in a lot of instances. So I think that's the way forward, is to continue to talk about it. That's how you break down the stigma. I mean, just take a look at all these other topics that used to be forbidden, taboo topics in our society. And the way that those topics got mainstreamed and are now no longer forbidden or taboo and are accepted is because, people talked about them more. They became conversation items, and they were no longer something to be feared. And I think that's the way forward with the UAP topic, is to just continue to talk about it, continue to share what you know. But I'm also going to give a caveat. I wouldn't lead with the NHI, and I think there's a reason why they didn't lead with the NHI in the age of disclosure, because for some people, that's still a little too much to chew. Is the notion that the little green men or the little gray men are there. It's easier for people to kind of, I think, be gradually broken into it, which, again, here we are talking about, does disclosure need to be ripping the Band-Aid off, or gradual? And I think there are some people, mainly the ones that do not follow everything here, that what they need to do is they need to be eased into the conversation, some people, and you'll know who they are when you encounter them. But I think that is the way forward, is just that, is to talk about it. Just talk about it. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, there's also the fear factor too, Jim. The fear factor. I mean, look at people like what happened to Travis Walton. Some people are absolutely, they don't want that to happen to them. I don't want to be taken aboard and abducted and taken somewhere and having tests done on me or anything like that. Did it happen? For sure. I mean, I have a tendency to believe Travis Walton, his story. I've actually been able to sit and hear him give that story before. And you've heard of other, Betty and Betty
Barney
Hill.
Hill.
Betty and Barney.
Yes.
Yep.
When they were, abducted. So, there's that fear factor that you have to get past with some people as well. So, I mean, how do you do that? That's a hard barrier to get past, I think.
You know what's kind of funny? I was just thinking about this, about Mike's comment of normalizing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's already relatively normal for people to experience this stuff. What's not normal is talking about it.
Yeah.
If you get the right group you could pick like 10 random people, and probably at least a couple of them are going to say, oh yeah, I've had some weird stuff happen to me, or I've seen some stuff I can't explain. That part of it's not that rare. People experience things they can't explain all the time.
All the time.
They just don't talk about it. And they still kind of like to make fun of other people that talk about it. But then when you press them, they're like, okay, well, yeah, I did see something that was pretty freaky. I can't really explain it. So I guess that's what we need to get past that. Just say, look, it's okay to talk about this. It's really common. Maybe that's part of it, because there is the ridicule is built in, despite the fact that so many people experience this stuff.
Yeah. We talked about that stigma, last night at length, and it was built in. It started being built in, shortly after 1947, and really, and then you had Hollywood and everyone else jumping on the bandwagon and doing it as well. So. Really setting that into the consciousness. So, Mike, you're exactly right. Normalize it by talking about it. That's all we can really do, I think, at this point. And it's inevitable. I think it's inevitable that at some point, when I made that comment about the mothership showing up over D.C., I think at some point that scenario is inevitable. So whether we face it 50 years from now when I'm long gone, or we start to face that idea now, I'd rather face it now, and than then. But it's inevitable that it's going to happen at some point.
Imagine another Phoenix Lights, not the flares.
Oh, yeah.
I think there was a separate instance. There was flares being dropped.
There was, yes.
But
yes.
lots of other people, including what was the mayor or the governor, said, no, he saw it. It was like, I saw this giant triangular craft going slowly over the city. This is before we had cell phones. If that exact event happened today,
there'd be tons of pictures.
Thousands of people would have footage of that.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen.
Spanked after he talked about it. He was spanked down, and then he had to go and have some guy walk on in a suit and play it off, you know. But think about this too. AI. That's one of the things that, you know, we have to embrace AI today. We got to really get a hold of it, and it's here. We're not going to stop it. It's coming. So you might as well embrace it. But probably, I'm going to jump out and just, in my own opinion, say 50% of what you see in TikTok or any kind of other social media of a UFO or a UAP video is faked. It's not real. So, I mean, people are looking at it, and that continues that stigma going, it's fake news. It's not real. It's not happening. It's all been created by somebody in their, you know, basement of their house, and they're putting this all together with AI. That just helps to make it worse to prove to people that it's really happening. If the government comes out and says it, which they already have, how do you go past that? I mean,
yeah, that's a great point. You know, I try to keep the viewpoint when I see stuff online that, you know, if it might look impressive, if I don't know where it came from, I don't have the provenance for the video, I have no way to verify anything. You kind of just have to file it away as, yeah, that's interesting, unless you obviously know it's fake. But even if it looks real, if you don't have all of that information, you just file it away as, yeah, maybe, and if someone can verify it, that's pretty neat, or until someone verifies it, yeah, I will remember that in case we see it again in the future, or someone else corroborates it that, you know, we trust, but that's not how social media works.
Right.
You put stuff out there and it's the truth, right? Even if it's not.
And to your point earlier with DC and the flares, you know, we've had historical instances of this in the past. The Battle of Los Angeles is probably the most famous example, where during World War II, we felt like we were being invaded. They had air raid sirens, lights going, and they have no idea what that was. But folks, as you may have noticed, we've currently lost Jim Kelgard. He's experiencing some technical difficulties, as hopefully we haven't noticed too badly with his connection, but we should see him back here hopefully soon. But to you folks that are here with us still, let me pose a little bit of a question here. So the age of disclosure is a perfect example of something we can use to help breach that gap with the average people that don't really get into this topic like you all here do. And we can use that to just show, hey, there's a credibility to this topic. It's real. There is things going on. Now, do you believe that all of us here, members of our audience, members of Congress, do you believe we have a moral or ethical obligation to talk about this? You know, I personally believe we do have an ethical obligation and moral obligation to discuss the things that we've seen, the evidence, follow the data. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you feel about that?
You guys go first.
No.
Well, yeah, John, tell us your majestic opinions here.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the most important questions of all time. Are we alone in the universe? You know, that's something we've been asking for about as long as we've had the capacity to think that sort of thought. And we've answered that question in various ways, but I think it's important for us to face that head on, that, okay, we might actually have enough evidence in front of us, and the government might actually have that information that answers it definitively. Like, we absolutely are not alone, and here are some of the things sharing our space with us. So you've got that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the technology. The technology that they have developed would be, to call it game-changing would be an understatement. That doesn't do it justice. You know, it would completely revamp our energy infrastructure. I mean, it could launch us literally into a Star Trek style universe and culture, a civilization, rather than what we have now. You would no longer need nuclear power or solar or burning petroleum products to get fuel or to get electricity. It would be abundant. Like anyone that needed power would have it. Maybe we're not prepared for that either, but I think it does kind of reach the level of it being a moral issue.
Yeah, I think the moral and ethical obligation is to allow people to talk about it and not try and discredit them and not, be part of the crowd that poo-poos it or talks about getting him a tinfoil hat. That's the unethical part in my mind, is trying to prevent the discussion from happening. If you don't want to participate, that's okay. But don't try and stop others from having that conversation. Don't, make it uncomfortable or create policies or procedures that will cause someone harm, financially or otherwise, by trying to talk about it and to bring this out in the open. It's got to be something that we can discuss, or we're never going to, make any progress towards things like free energy and getting away from using fossil fuels and things like that. So to me, that's where the onus lies.
Yeah. Yeah, I got pretty animated last night with this, as at the end of our podcast that we did last night with you guys, and my opinion went out there pretty. I was getting pretty loud about it, but I think it's, and I'll try to just reiterate that just quickly here to say that at the end of, I felt it as we were watching all along through the Age of Disclosure movie, and then at the end, the way that Jay and Lou were talking about this and expressing their desires, I felt inside, I felt this obligation that we needed to really push this out there, and we needed to get talking about this. We needed to, everyone who believes that what they portrayed was absolutely true, and I do, that we needed to do our part to keep this conversation going. And as it was stated, the fire has started. We need to keep it burning. And I think that's absolutely true for anyone that feels the same way that's watched this. So
That might have been the highlight of the episode last night, Jeff, was you got very you got very animated. I loved it. Because we were all like, preach. We're all on board. It was great.
I feel that strongly about it. I really do.
Yep.
We got to help to make this normalize this, as Mike put it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect time to remind our audience, of course, if you haven't done so already, go over to the JFree906 channel, hit subscribe, watch our episode from last night, and give both them and ourselves a like and some comments. Let us know what you think about what we're doing.
The JFree906 podcast, it's one of the best around, honestly. I think every time we mention it, there should be applause in the background. That's how much I like your podcast, you guys. It's absolutely, you set the bar for podcasts in this realm. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I tell you, it's honestly, I think it's because of the people that we bring on, and having a great co-host in this kind of talking about this stuff, like Mike being a co-host with me on it, and then having great guests, and you all made it happen. So I think I contributed to that. I'm so very fortunate, quickly, I'll say this quickly, but I'm so very fortunate that I've met some wonderful people throughout this process and made some really good friends in this process. And that's something that I feel blessed about. It really, truly has. And you guys willing to come on the show means so much to me personally, because you must feel good about it or you wouldn't do it. So that's where I stand on all of that. But thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, I see who's back here. All right.
Jim.
Can you guys?
There
can
we
you guys
go.
see
We've
me?
got Jim
We
back.
can
Yes,
see you
sir,
and
we
hear you
can.
now. This is great.
Okay,
right.
so I've got I had to get on my phone because my internet connection at home is completely shot, and the Ethernet's not working either. So apologies for for not having the best lighting and everything here, but I'm back. That's the big thing. What I miss?
We're
All
about
right.
to wrap
Well,
up.
so we're getting to a point
Just
now
kidding.
that we're gonna pose this to everybody. You know, the age of disclosure is just the tip of the spear of disclosure at large and this topic. So, what would be the next steps? What do we want to see going forward after the age of disclosure? What do we want to see from Congress, from the public? What do you feel? What do you think? Let's go with you, John. Let's start with you, and then we'll bring Jim back into the mix.
Wow, that's a great question. Well, what I'm hoping is, quickly, I want to address something that leads into my answer to that question. A lot of the people who follow this topic closely have watched The Age of Disclosure and said, oh, well, there's nothing new in it. I think I would say to those people, then this wasn't for you. This is for the people who maybe don't follow this all the time, that to get the message out to them. And ultimately, you will get a maybe not a tidal wave, but a growing tide of people talking about this, thinking about this, especially in terms of who they vote for or the types of questions they ask and the types of issues that they think are important when political campaigns come around or surveys come around about what topics need to be addressed. Ultimately, we need to apply pressure on Congress, but that happens through the people. If the people don't apply the pressure, Congress doesn't care. They've got, as Jeff said, they've got the campaign contributors behind them. They're going to do whatever they want. But if you get enough groundswell among the public to push for an answer on this topic, you might get some movement. So that's ultimately what I hope happens. It's going to be interesting to see. We know people in government have seen this movie. I mean, not just the ones that participated in it. Plenty of others have seen it now, and they're talking about it. The people that are involved in that legacy program, they've seen it. Surely they're talking about it, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do if this dam breaks? We need to start making some contingency plans. But also, what if we can pressure Congress enough that they start passing laws with teeth? That's the best that we could ask for. I'm other than that, I'm not sure.
I would agree. That definitely sounds, yeah, spot on.
I think one of the things that we really need is actual protection for whistleblowers, not some lip service. We all know what happened to David Grush, and no repercussions from that. To me, that should be the first thing that should have been taken care of, is to protect them. And then if somebody finds a loophole and still attacks someone, then there's repercussions for that. And then we shore up the loophole. It just feels like they put something on paper so they can say there's whistleblower protection, but then it starts to be used as a honeypot to try and get people to come in and tell what they know and then shut it down or classify it and make sure that you can hide that too. That's not what this is supposed to be. You've got to allow people to be able to come forward and talk about this stuff without any kind of repercussions.
Yep. If I could jump in on that too, real quick, I would just say too that we have to be a little bit careful about the legislation. So oftentimes, something that we feel is important and necessary, and when they draw these things up, they add things into it that are not what we really wanted. Now, there was the Patriot Act has turned out to was a good thing, but yet has been misused as well, as we all know. So the proposal that Schumer and Rounds and Gillibrand are putting together, their efforts are continuing on this, we have to be careful how it is worded, and it needs to stay about UAP type technology and information data that they have needs to be disclosed and to Congress, and then Congress needs to make sure that we know about it as well. So we have to be careful that it doesn't go beyond that. That they say now, because of what we wrote into this, I can come to your house and take what you have too. So I mean, where again, do I have a little bit of distrust? Yeah, I do. You know, but we need to help them. It's if Congress, if the people come out, we've talked about this before. People say it, Congress will get it, media will be talking about it. It'll become normalized. We hopefully can get some kind of legislation put through. But man, I sure want to read it first.
Hmm.
I don't want to go with the Pelosi thing of we got to pass it so we can find out what's in it. No,
Right.
we don't do it that way. Sorry,
That always
Mhm.
ends well, doesn't it?
always.
And of course, folks, we're talking about here the UAP Transparency Act that
Yes.
Mike Rounds and Schumer put through with Gillibrand, of course. Now, it does carve out whistleblower protections for the UAP, but how far does that truly go is kind of our
Right.
concern. I think that what we're all voicing is, you know, how does this whistleblower protection really do? Because we're extending pre-existing whistleblower protections, but those whistleblower protections are really not, bulletproof. They don't truly protect against certain things, and we'd like to see more in the future continued legislation that pushes not only the disclosure and the declassification of documents, but encouraging people to come forward without threat outside of what we can never really stop, which is the court of public opinion.
Right. Yeah, my 2 cents on the matter. Um, I think when I got cut off, I was emphasizing my point of how do we move forward and mainstream it, and that's by talking. So I still, just to tie up that bit there, I think that's really what it comes down to, is just talking about it and not having fear. Be confident when we have these conversations with people about this. But I also think 100% whistleblower protections need to be bolstered. They need to be strengthened. They need to have protections in place. And again, Johnny, you just said, how deep is that protection going to go? Um, as deep as we can possibly allow it without compromising the integrity of national security, I guess, would be the key thing. And how they go about doing that, I can't even begin to speak on what that process would look like. But I absolutely believe that it's something that needs to happen going forward, is protecting whistleblowers. The legislation it needs to get passed, and that's one thing that I don't know if you guys touched upon when I was trying to get back on here, but the fact that this is truly a bipartisan issue right now cannot be understated. The significance of that, overstated, excuse me. As it's something that is so important, and especially when we see how divided uh, our political system is right now and how tribalistic it is. We have to come together on those very rare topics that truly unite everybody. And the UAP topic is something that honestly everybody, except for a handful of people in Congress that maybe their home districts are where there's a high concentration of defense contractors, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Most members of Congress are pushing for this transparency. They want they want to know more, and they already have the power to make things happen, but they've got to put some teeth behind that power. And I don't know if that was you, Mike, or you, Jeff, that said that, but it needs to they need to make it consistent in the enforcement should such legislation get passed. That's also a very key thing. But I also I think that's just it. Is they're all I'd like to see Congress use their power of the subpoena as well. David Grush was the first one that talked about there being hostile witnesses. And for those that don't know what that means, hostile witnesses would mean people that have knowledge, that do know these things, or that are currently actively working in these programs. They can be subpoenaed to testify whether they want to be there or not. If they don't want to come and testify, the House of Representatives, the Congress, they have the ability to issue a subpoena compelling the people that are in those positions to come forward and talk about what they know. Now, the downside to that is if you get a hostile witness that gets subpoenaed, they can always invoke their Fifth Amendment privilege, right? And we've seen that enacted many times in the past for other instances. But I think we need to take full advantage of the fact that I misspoke there. I think we need to take advantage of the fact that the majority of Congress on both sides of the aisle are behind this. And they are with most of the American people, if not most of the people in the world, that just want to know more. But I also think, and I don't know if you guys talked about this, I think the other thing that needs to happen is the next round of interviews, the next round of congressional hearings need to involve the presentation of evidence. People are starting to get a little bit bothered by the fact, and that's one of the biggest criticisms that I've heard about Age of Disclosure, is that, okay, they're not really saying anything that hasn't already been said, when in fact there's quite a few things that are said in the documentary that nobody has said before, at least nobody of the of the credibility and the stature of the people that were saying them in this documentary. So, but there needs to be presentation of actual evidence at some point. It's pretty well accepted that, yes, there's a legacy UFO program. Yes, it's been covered up. Uh, Purposely, it's been held beyond the oversight of Congress for the better part of 80 or 90 years. But we need to start seeing some of the actual proof of that. We need to see photographs and or videos that are high resolution, that leave no question, that are officially sanctioned and verified by the United States government, by the Department of Defense, Office of Naval Intelligence, whoever it may be. So I think that does need to be the next step, is that just saying that it exists and saying that the programs are real is one thing. It's getting to be time where we need to start having that testimony and those words backed up with evidence. And that's where things are really going to start, uh, I think, picking up momentum, is once we see more video, once we see higher resolution video, once we see, heaven forbid, acknowledgement that what was it, Holloman Air Force Base, where the UAP landed, and the NHI came out and apparently communicated with CIA and staff that were there at the Air Force Base. Now, that's a long running thing that people that pay attention to the UFO field are aware of, that story going back to, what was it, the Eisenhower? I think it was during the Eisenhower or the Truman administration when it happened. But still, we need to see documents that substantiate things like Roswell. We need to see the actual documents that substantiate what happened at Kecksburg and what happened at Cape Girardeau, Missouri in 1943, and the Magenta crash from 1933. So I think once evidence starts to actually get released, that's going to be when we're going to see this really kick into high gear. And when that will be is anybody's guess. The only other thing that I think could speed up disclosure at this point is if the phenomena itself were to do like a mass sighting like we saw with the Phoenix Lights back in 1997. I think that's the only other thing that I can think of offhand that would really, truly push it into the next gear, as it were. But Age of Disclosure was sorely needed and sorely appreciated, at least by me. I think that this film does so much to move everything forward, because it's not so much what was being said, it was what was being said by who was saying it. It's the first time we heard Jay Stratton say some of these things. And it's the first time that we've heard Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis go into such great detail and speak so matter-of-factly about it. So I don't think that can be the importance of that can be overstated either.
And what was interesting? There was at least two that I remember. Two people in the age of disclosure that said everything that David Grush testified to was true. And I believe it was Jay that said, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Yep.
Think about that for a minute. Serious. I'm not being serious. Think about that. If everything, David Grush is already talking about quote unquote biologicals being recovered with these craft, craft recovery teams, all of that. If that's all true and it's just the tip of the iceberg, we might be in for a pretty wild ride, right? I mean,
for sure.
We were talking earlier about what does everything mean if we want them to disclose everything. Maybe we don't want them to disclose everything. It might be a lot. No, I'm just joking. I want everything, but still, it's
right.
We might not be. I won't say. We can't say maybe we're not prepared, but we still might be a little bit shocked about what everything actually entails. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. Especially, what is it going to do? And I'm going to speak of myself. What is it going to do for the average person who doesn't really follow this topic when they find out that some of the more abstract aspects and facets of this overall phenomena end up being true? That there is more than one species of non-human intelligence that has been here on this planet, or that maybe actually be here. What if we find out that they aren't extraterrestrial at all, but they've actually been inhabitants of this planet all along, right beside us, and maybe they live in the oceans, and they're the ET hypothesis. I got to be honest, as you all know, I was always open to the idea of this being extraterrestrial, but I didn't necessarily say that it's going to be the most likely of the possible scenarios of what the NHI really are. I now feel that, the NHI, maybe it really is extraterrestrial, but I still also hold out the possibility that it could be cryptoterrestrial. It could be a species that's been here on planet Earth at least as long as we have, if not longer. Maybe they're the original inhabitants of the Earth, and just because of their advanced intelligence and technology, they've been able to remain hidden from us for the most part. Maybe they live in the oceans, and as so many have said, including Tim Gallaudet, what better place to hide yourself from these psychopaths called human beings than in the ocean, where we're automatically we can't get to some of the depths that are in the ocean because they're so deep, and the atmospheric pressure, just a human being cannot go down there. And that's so yeah, I think it's going to be we already live in that brave new world, gentlemen, and I think Age of Disclosure was really good at illustrating that. We live in a far more complex, far more interesting, and far more challenging world than maybe any of us ever realized. And I'm excited by that proposition of what comes next.
A question.
Absolutely.
Do you all think it would be more palatable if the crypto-terrestrial perspective, if that one's true? Is it more palatable that rather than being invaded by some alien race, we're really just being introduced to something that's been here longer than us, that's just hard to detect? Would that be better or worse?
Right. One of the scenarios, you look at the human perception capability. We perceive an incredibly narrow range of information. Eyesight, sound, smell, taste, all of that, very, very narrow band. What if, like you said, there's been creatures on this planet that evolved right alongside us that only reflect light in infrared that we can't see? They've been here all along, and look at the technology advancement that we've had. Anything related to the computer has been in the last couple of decades. So we're just now starting to get to a point where we have technology capabilities to let us see and experience things outside of what our human body is even capable of. We're just a few years into it, evolutionary wise. I mean, we haven't even been around that long. So to get to a point within the last few years of being able to perceive things in other outside of what the human capability is, to me it seems like the more that we look, the more we see, the more we begin to wonder if stuff's been here all along.
We did a podcast once a couple of years ago called "Can't Touch This." That's what I named it. "Can't Touch This." And it was about our limitations that, like you just talked about, limitations on our sight, our sound, our smell. What if we also have that on what we can touch? What if we're limited on what we can touch as well? And that bodes to things that could be living around us right here in this very room that I'm sitting in that I can't see, touch, smell, or hear, or anything. Could very well be there.
Yeah.
So that's a scary aspect. I really I kind of tend to want to believe extraterrestrial than something here. I do. I feel more.
Yeah.
Why do I feel more comfortable with that? I don't know, but I do.
Well, you bring up a good point, Jeff. I mean, one of the things, and I'm always going to find a way to tie something back to Skinwalker Ranch, right? But let's take a look at the secret of Skinwalker Ranch and the phenomenon that they've encountered there called the blob, right? By all accounts, it seems that this object that is at least occasionally above the triangle in Skinwalker Ranch is able to remain completely hidden and invisible to human detection, to our eyes and everything. But yet we've seen, again, there's the word data that shows that there is something there that is a physical object. We've seen some method of force that is applied that doesn't allow rockets to go right up at it. It seems to deflect the trajectory of rockets. It deflects the trajectory of water bottles that were tossed out of a helicopter and medicine balls, right? So this is something that exists and is very real, but it's beyond our ability to perceive it with our sight. We can't see it with the naked eye. And I think there's a lot of instances, and in fact, I think the M. Night Shyamalan movie Signs, that was one of the things that the
But we lost
alien.
Jim again.
You lost me again? Oh
Again.
no. No. Ah.
There he is.
Oh, you're back.
There he
Okay.
goes.
All right.
M. Night Shyamalan. That's the last we heard was M.
Okay,
Night
so
Shyamalan movie.
the M. Night Shyamalan movie Signs, okay, the aliens in that, they were able to remain hidden. Their ships that were in the air, and there was that scene that you see where Joaquin Phoenix is watching the footage of these aliens, and you can see a bird flying through the air, and then bam, it smacks into something and falls from the sky, something that's not there, but it's there. So yeah, I think that's again, this rabbit hole goes so deep, and there's so many aspects to it. It's how can you not find it exciting and not want to talk about it?
I can almost hear your wife Michelle rolling her eyes at the mention of M. Night Shyamalan there. But to Mike's question, I feel like it would almost be less palatable by the average person, the idea that there is somebody already here that we just don't know about. I feel like that would be really hard for most people to understand versus the outside. Because when you take the outside realm coming in, I feel that's a little easier to digest than how did we just not know they're here? How did this come to be? But to back up a little bit to kind of rein back a point Jim was discussing earlier with Congress. So Congress has the power of the subpoena to be able to bring people in and talk about really any subject that they want to have them discuss. Now, one of the natures of a congressional hearing, when you're subpoenaed in, you're forced to be there. You don't have the same protections that a whistleblower would have. So under the UAP Disclosure Act, there are protections, there's carve-outs to protect someone who's a whistleblower. There's currently nothing in legislation that protects someone that's coming in and discussing things at their own free will, so to speak, even though they're forced to be there ultimately.
Right.
Now, that I feel like is a really important next stage for us to get to is how do we also protect the people who are subpoenaed to be there that have to discuss these topics? Because that's why we get hostile witnesses. It's why we get people that don't want to discuss it, is they are not protected under anything that they discuss.
Excellent point.
To rein us in a little bit, I guess, kind of get some final thoughts and conclusions here. Does anyone have anything that we haven't discussed that is just burning in the back of your mind that we need to get to?
I do have one thing I wanted to bring up to put out to all of you as my last point. What role does consciousness play in all of this? What role does consciousness play in maybe communicating with the phenomenon? I think that consciousness is the missing link here, and I don't know if I can articulate properly why I feel that, but I think that consciousness is part of the way forward, figuring out more about how consciousness works. How do we use it to our benefit? And is consciousness the way that the phenomenon communicates with us? So I think part of the solution lies with consciousness. And I think, and I've said it before, I think that someday we find out that consciousness is the most predominant life form, if that's the proper term, in the universe is consciousness. I had a great conversation with Paul H. Smith about this at Phenomicon. I'd so love to get him on to talk to us.
Yeah.
But his insights on consciousness were absolutely breathtaking and mind-blowing. And so I think that consciousness is a component of this overall greater phenomenon. What do you guys think?
I think that might be
it's
the
integral.
sense that Mike was just talking about. Like we have our normal senses. Yeah. Consciousness might be that thing that we are conscious, but we don't really know much about consciousness. If there's this all pervasive field of consciousness or something like that, what if that's something that these advanced races or beings can tap into in ways that we can't even begin to imagine?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Mike, I stepped on you right as you were about to say
No.
something.
Go ahead,
No,
Mike.
that was good. I think it's integral. I think, if you listen to the telepathy tapes,
Yes.
they're doing a really good job of starting to normalize that topic too. It seems to be almost integral. It seems like maybe we're the only species we know of that has developed the capability of speech, and it seems like that may be a handicap. That's actually limited us, whereas consciousness allows a much freer form of communication across species. So I think it's integral. I think we're going to learn a lot more about it. I think it's probably a little further back on the curve to being normalized than this topic is. We're a little bit further down the path. Fortunately, we got a long ways to go still, but I think it's going to end up playing a large part of it. There's just been too many connections. It comes up too often. It's got to be a part of it somehow.
Right on. Completely agree. Jeff, how about you?
Well, for me, I think that, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. First of all, John Stratton, I think that I want to find out from your father, when is part 2 coming out? We need part 2 of this docu-series to come out and make it a docu-series, for sure. And I think that when they do, we need to see what we just talked about in the earlier about they've mentioned the more high resolution video that's out there. There's actually supposedly video of some of the non-human intelligence, the biologics out there. We need to see some of that. I think that's where the next step is, in my opinion. That's the next hurdle we need to cross, because as we have discussed here, that's the one thing that was lacking from this. I believe in the integrity of the people that were all on this movie, and I totally believe in the integrity of your father and Lou Elizondo, and the if I could say, the huevos that they had to even do this in the first place was great. But we need that. We need that. We need something more to look at. The Tic Tac video, the gimbal, all that was fascinating. And I'm so glad that it came out and it made its way into the media and everything else. But we need more. And I think that's where we're at with that next step. So part 2, tell them that we want part 2. And Farah needs to do it because I think that this movie was done so very well. I think the way they took us through all the years and everything going back in the old days of when it all started, 1947, and all the way to present day, I think they did a fantastic job putting this together. We need part 2, and we need more data. We need to see some more stuff, whatever they can share, and go there. That's what I'd love to see for the coming.
Farah said on Rogan, the director's cut's 4 hours or more.
Ooh.
He had to
I
get it
would-
down to only what it is now.
I would pay extra to see the director's cut.
Who would I?
No doubt about that.
I'm watching the Rogan thing, and I'm almost done. We're going to finish watching the rest of it. It is very good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It
After
is.
you watch your 10th playthrough of Age of Disclosure, of course.
This
So-
afternoon after this,
Oh, yeah.
I
my
was going to say that's just after the show. I'll go watch it.
And not to go too far off topic here, but James Fox is releasing a new cut of Moment of Contact next month, I believe, that brings in new details about his the UFO crash at Varginha, Brazil, that happened in 1996. So I love the fact that there's maybe a door open to have a director's cut of the Age of Disclosure. I think that would be awesome.
So I
So-
can't get into anything that I know about the inner workings of that, because also part of the factor is, as I've expressed, I am generally one of the last people to know, and I find out through other sources. We don't discuss a lot of it. However, I will, in fact, inform them that you're looking for round 2. I'm looking for round 2. I'm sure the viewers at home are as well. And, my final thoughts really about the Age of Disclosure is, I believe that not only is the greatest documentary of its kind, I think that this is perhaps one of the greatest documentaries, period, of all time. And if Dan Farah does not get an Oscar for this, I don't know what my opinions of the Oscars would be. I know they can't hurt my opinions of them any further, but this would definitely do so. So ultimately, Disclosure falls to us and for the viewer that we need to take that step forward. We need to destigmatize. We need to be open, honest, and just have the integrity of the people involved that we have, and be thankful that we can have that. So that's kind of my closing thoughts about this, is just
Yeah.
we need more, and we need to continue. This is only the first step in the truly entering of the Age of Disclosure.
Well said, John. Your viewpoints on the closing thoughts and remarks.
No, I absolutely. If they did an Age of Disclosure 2, shut up and take my money. That's I would pay for that. I'm paying for the director's cut. I'll get the Blu-ray, even though I don't have a Blu-ray player. You name it, I'm going to get it. We need more of it. But yeah, I love the idea of let's get some evidence in there, some videos, even if it's just a little bit. Let's just get a little bit more out there than the stuff that we've seen from 2004. That would be fantastic. But
Right
yeah,
on.
my final thoughts is on the Age of Disclosure itself is, it's absolutely fantastic. And I don't even know how many times I'm going to end up watching it, because there's just a wealth of information in it.
Yeah.
And I really hope more people, I hope it ends up in the running for an Academy Award, because that would get it even more exposure. Even if it didn't win, just even being mentioned,
Being nominated.
we'll get it out there a little bit further. People might say, hey, I wonder what that is. And they
Yeah.
might go, get it. But fingers crossed.
Right on. Jeff, closing thoughts and remarks from you. I think you had a quote for us.
Yeah, this was a quote, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it was from Lou Elizondo. What he said: "We are beginning the greatest paradigm shift in human history," and that I agree with right there. The greatest.
I
paradigm-
will add a quote from my dad from our last episode.
Please.
Ditto.
The man.
That's
Jay
about- that's a-
Stratton is a man of few words.
That is about
That's
the only.
exact.
That's about the only quotable quote we can do from that last episode we did with the Hitchhiker,
Yeah.
where we had Jay and the whole band on. Yeah, ditto. Very well said. Yeah. Anything else, Jeff, before we get Mike's closing thoughts? All right, Mike, closing thoughts and remarks from you.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really good documentary. To me, the best part about the documentary is the fact that there are 34 people interviewed. I know that Elizondo is not everybody's cup of tea, and some people can't stand him. That's fine. Ignore everything he said in the show. Strike it from the record. You got 33 other people, high caliber people. If there's a politician there you don't like because you're one side or the other, fine, strike it. We'll take 2 off. You still got 32 other high caliber people talking about this topic. That's the advantage of them all coming out all at once, as almost a show of force, really really hits home. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been watching it over and over, is to try and memorize what some of these people are saying and how they're saying it. Because you're right, I knew a lot of the stuff that was talked about, but I didn't know all of it, or they expanded on stuff that I'd heard before, the topic wise, but they added a little bit more color to one of the stories or one of the scenarios that I may have already heard of before. So there is still some good stuff in there, but seeing everybody all at once in one show, one 45-minute show, knowing that there's a couple more hours maybe somewhere that can be put out there for a round 2. It's fantastic. And it's all in one nice, neat little package that is so well professionally done. I'd give it to anybody as a starting point, that's new to the topic, but has an open mind. Okay, let me know, what's the deal? I'd point them to this. This is the beginning.
Yeah. Well said. And I would just add my amen to what every single one of you have said. And I think that Age of Disclosure is the most historically significant documentary that we've ever seen on this particular topic. I think it has the potential to enact change, meaningful change, moving forward. And I think it has the ability to be the momentum shift that we've needed to get this disclosure process really truly moving down the tracks at a proper pace. I think that everybody that appeared in the documentary was just about as credible and authoritative and awesome as can be. And I'm one of those people that has that isn't really sure what to believe about Lou Elizondo at times. But that notwithstanding, I felt that the things that Lou said were on point. And the fact that you had other people there like Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, Jay Stratton, to essentially support and substantiate the basic message that Lou was getting out there. I think it just goes to show that these are all people that are on the same page, and it's important to see that united front. And I think that Dan Farah deserves the biggest round of applause. In fact, I'm going to raise my glass as a toast to honor Jay Stratton, Hal Puthoff, Lou Elizondo, and everybody, Eric Davis, everybody that appeared on the documentary, as well as Dan Farah in particular. And a big thank you to all the media people like Jake Tapper of CNN, Bill Maher on HBO, and the folks at Fox News and News Nation that have been giving this topic the time and attention and the gravitas that it deserves. It's nice to see that. And lastly, I raise my glass to each and every one of you, gentlemen, to you, John, to you, Jeff, and Johnny, and to you, Mike. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this episode with us. It's been such an honor to be on here with all of you. And also, I salute all of our subscribers and viewers. I toast each and every one of you as well. And as we're heading into the Thanksgiving holiday here. For those of you that celebrate the holiday, I want to wish all of you and your families a very safe and happy Thanksgiving, and hope that everybody has a enjoyable holiday. And want to remind everybody to please subscribe to Jeff's JFree906 podcast. Check it out. The stuff that they talk about with the Curse of Oak Island and Secret of Skinwalker Ranch and all kinds of other cool stuff. You'll see why I consider them the gold standard of podcasting. And Jeff is just one of the greatest and finest human beings that I've been blessed with the opportunity to know. He's like family to me. I think of him very highly. And he's a Lions fan, so of course I'm a big fan. And
they won today.
and they won, so yes. And last I saw, the Chiefs were getting beat by whoever it was they were playing. So sorry, Linda. And I don't even want to know what the score is for my Raiders game right now. But but Mike, and getting a chance to meet you at Phenomicon this last year was just awesome. And hope that this is the first of many more to come, where we can combine our two podcasts on some of these topics that we're so passionate about. But to close up, folks, if you like what you saw here today, hit that subscribe button down below for the Soul of the Unexplained, and give us a like, because we like likes. And please feel free to leave us a comment. What do you think about this Age of Disclosure documentary? What do you think were some of the important things to come out of it? What maybe didn't you like? What are the things that you're hopeful of? And will we continue to get more momentum behind this disclosure movement? And I'm hopeful and optimistic, especially after watching The Age of Disclosure. So with that, folks, again, thank you all so much. And John and Johnny and myself and Roger, hopefully, will see all of you next time right here on The Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.